Well, it is said in many ancient traditions, those who speak do not know, and those who know do not speak. So that puts me in a difficult position. Pretty much every day, particularly on Sundays. But you know, the spiritual path is full of paradox. I was thinking about my poor son this morning and what it must be like to grow up with a weirdo like me. You know, how many parents are chasing their children saying, you know, don't just sit there. Get out and do something. And there's me running around. Stop doing so much. Just sit there. It's like, what? What? So stillness is one of these topics that is like breath. So essential. So vital. Yet so close that we often take it for granted. We often forget that it's even happening. And yet, it is the foundation of all experienced reality. Everything in this moment plays upon a stage of stillness. And stillness is the vehicle to return to that from which all these things come. And yet, perhaps like breath, stillness is something that's easy to engage poorly and unconsciously, and difficult to transform into a mindful practice. Most of us are breathing right now. Okay, I think we're all breathing right now. But few of us with much awareness, and some of us in ways that are minimizing our vitality, and some of us in ways that are accentuating our presence, and all different variations in between. And so it is with stillness. We forget that when we make stillness a part of our life, we begin to naturally acquire so much of what we seek: mindfulness, resilience, clear-headedness, open-heartedness, because those qualities reside in the stillness. The stillness is the antidote for so much of what we suffer. But it's tricky because the mind vanishes into the stillness and becomes terrified in the process. Like, don't go in there, I'm not welcome. Right? The mind suffocates in stillness, and the soul comes to life. It's one of the simplest practices you can take on if you want to experience the oneness of life every day. In what you do, in your relationships, in your relationship to life. It's to take time in stillness. And the greater the time in stillness, the greater the medicine you will receive. But think of this. Of all the practices that I ask people to try, stillness is probably the one that people resist the most. You might not believe me, but if I said tomorrow, or let's be more realistic, in the next 2 weeks, I want you to find 8 hours and a comfortable place to sit and just sit there. That's it. It's not asking a lot. I'm not asking you to climb a mountain. I'm not asking you to solve world hunger. I'm not asking you to be outside in the burning heat. Just 8 hours anywhere. And just sit there. Just be still. Do I meditate? Do I pray? Well, what should this 8 hours look like? Just be still. I guess I could meditate then. I guess I can do breath work. I guess I can pray. Yeah, sure. You can fill it all kinds of ways, but your sole intention is to return to stillness again and again and again. And I promise you, you will learn so much about yourself. You will learn so much about what's on your mind, what's in your heart, and what's holding you back. 8 hours, and you're getting off easy. One of the practices that I've written a bit about and that I certainly talk about in a lot of my classes and workshops is that I've participated in a lot is what non-Native American people call vision quest. Vision quest is something that's kind of sensationalized in movies and stories, and it sounds very dramatic. And it interestingly came up in a conversation just a few days ago, and I was talking to someone about that. Oh, because someone said to me, I'm going to be doing a vision quest. And I was like, oh yeah, great, And I said, it's something that I'm like a big fan of, and I've done a lot of it in my life. Tell me about your experience. And she kind of told me what she meant by it. And then she said, well, what's it like when you do it? And I said, well, we're in my sort of family community. There's a time of prayer and preparation, ceremonies of purification. And then you're taken under cover of a blanket far into a wilderness setting. You start off in the wilderness and then you just go deeper in. And then you're taken to a place that's kind of an opening, a clearing, maybe as big as this rug here. And then within that, there's a ceremonial space about the size of a queen-size bed, delineated. And then you sit there. And she was kind of with me. Oh yeah, and then the oh yeah, and then the oh yeah, and then I said sit there, and then she sort of said what? You just sit there? And I was like, well, you can stand. Oh, but aren't you going for a walk or exploring or just sit there? I was like, yeah, you just sit there. Just sit there. Whoa. Well, what about your tent, your shelter? No, there's no shelter. Well, when do you prepare your food? There's no food. Well, but you got your water bottle. We all need to hydrate. No, there's no water bottle. There's nothing. There's nothing but you in the moment. And then you just sit there. Oh, she said. All day? Oh, 4 days. I mean, sometimes 3. And if maybe you're injured or ill, you get away with 2. Whatever the heat, whatever the bugs, whatever the weather does, whatever your mind does, whatever your heart does, you just return to stillness again and again and again. And after that, again. And a curious thing happens, which is that, well, let me be honest. Your first hours of your 8 hours will be like my first day of the 4 days, in which you spend most of it wondering why you're doing it anyway. Right? I mean, what's the point? I could read a book about this. I think I could watch a movie about this. I'd be much more productive and make a bigger difference in the world if I was out there volunteering right now. This is absurd. I have people to call and people to text. Maybe I could just get up for a second. I didn't really eat enough for breakfast. Maybe I could just have a snack and start my 8 hours over. You know, this kind of stuff. Bargaining. I think it's kind of like Kubler-Ross's stages of death with lots of anger and denial. This is stupid. Why would he tell me to do this? What are you going to get out of 8 hours? I've been sitting here, all I got is a sore butt. So the first day passes, and if you're lucky, the thinking begins to become speckled, and you spend less time analyzing life and judging things and telling stories and making plans and reviewing the past and then trying to fix it all righteously through prayer. And you start to become a little bit tired and bored. And maybe you nod off a little bit. And then you glimpse something as you wake up from your 30-second sleep. You know what you glimpse, right? You all have glimpsed it whenever you had a nap and wiped the drool from your face. There's that moment where there is an empty space. And it feels amazing. You can't remember what you were worried about. You can't remember what was hurting. You can't remember what you were supposed to be doing. The world was perfect. And then your phone rings, or someone's at the door, whatever happens, and the stillness breaks. But we have these moments of stillness. And then you remember, that's the taste. Oh, this is what I'm supposed to be doing here. 4 hours left to go. And that's where you place your awareness. Grow the stillness. Grow the stillness. The fear often comes from the fact that somewhere inside you, you've come to believe that in the stillness there is nothing. When in fact, in the stillness there is everything. So we resist. We resist giving up everything. Our brilliance, our intelligence, our compassion, all this stuff. Because what will we find in the place where there is nothing but stillness? And yet, remarkably, if you practice stillness, it will teach you naturally. Because as you sit there on the sunset of the second day, despite the sunburn and mosquito bites, or the end of the 6th hour, you'll start to notice things differently. Like you notice that a few hours before the sun disappears, the grasshoppers appear as if on cue. And then they're everywhere. And if you're still, you can hear them munching. And then you notice the birds become more active. Maybe they're eating some of the grasshoppers. The day is cooling down. And you notice the way each has its place in the canopy of trees, some high, some low. There's a perfect rhythm and pattern. Then you notice that the very breath of life changes. The air in our world is dynamic. Did you notice that? It's not the same in the morning. It's not the same in the afternoon. It's not the same in the evening. There's an influx of oxygen and moisture as the day cools. You could feel it. And if you have been in stillness, particularly without anything to eat or drink, you can even smell it and taste it. And then the crickets begin to sing, and the colors change in the evening sky, and you think, this magnificent beauty is happening every single day while I rush to appointments and set up meetings and go for dinner and read books to help me find beauty and joy and peace in my life. And I'm sitting on it. But only stillness reveals it. Every spiritual practice we do in some way, whether it's dance or chant or yoga or prayer or even sacred study, asks you to cultivate a stillness within. A stillness within. So there is stillness, the embodied practice, which is just sitting and being still. But its goal is to cultivate the inner stillness, which is the goal of all the practices. Stillness potentiates everything, whether it's the Holy Sacrament, whether it's silent meditation, whether it's a sweat lodge, whatever your path or tradition is, life reveals itself fully through the awareness that is stillness. Because that is the first awareness. That is God's awareness. The awareness of creation, creation's awareness. And it's not easy, because we have to make time for it, and it can be uncomfortable. But the last step, as you engage this practice of stillness in your life, is to then refine the art of returning to it moment to moment, all day and all night. You do the practice so that then you can perfect the game, right? I mean, doesn't every great performer, Sandra and Victor, don't you have to practice sometimes? Didn't you have to practice? I mean, talk about good. There's no words for how good these two are. But they need to practice so that when they perform, it's impeccable. And the same is true of stillness. You practice stillness conscientiously as a discipline so that when you struggle with those people, that thing, these reactions, in that very moment, you can slide back into stillness and then choose how you want to engage, how you will show up. So let's close with a moment of stillness. And I encourage you to cultivate this stillness as we move into the next beautiful piece. A piece whose beauty is because of its stillness. The space between the notes is what makes music magnificent. And so it is true in your life. Stillness is not the absence of sound or activity, but it is the consciousness with which we hold it. So let's close our eyes, breathe deeply in, and feel the stillness growing. During this stillness, embracing this harmony, release yourself from thinking and allow stillness to speak to you. through the opening of your heart.